All right, it is time for me to present to you my top 5 favorite weather and earth science myths. Hey again, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Mondays with Mike. I'm Chief Meteorologist Mike Iskovitz, and I want to really show off to you the toilet that I put here on this, my Earth. Look at it. Isn't that cool? It took me a long time to do that. It really did. So today we're going to go over the top 5 myths, and there's a reason that the toilet is on the Earth, and that is because that's my number 1 myth. The number 1 myth is that the toilet flushes counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere and clockwise in the southern hemisphere. You see, the myth is that because of the rotation of the Earth and this mysterious Coriolis force, that the water in the toilet spins the opposite way for our friends in Australia as it does for us in the USA. And we need to bust this myth because it is incorrect and it makes no sense at all. In fact, I've even heard stories of some tourists who, when they're either in Africa or in South America, somewhere where the equator is running through, and they're there on a tourist trip, and they would most likely pay money to be taken on this journey, across the equator. And somehow somebody would demonstrate to them, they would get a bowl or a dish or something and have the water spinning around and then magically have it change direction when they cross the equator. Well, that's got to be nothing more than a magic trick, because let's talk about it. What causes the Coriolis force? Well, the spinning of the Earth. Well, you have to think to yourself, how fast does the Earth spin? Once per day, right? It spins once per day. So that means that in any given second, okay, it spins, there are 86,400 seconds in a day. We're going to round that to 100,000, okay? We're going to round that up. So in any given second, the Earth has spun 1/100,000th of a rotation. Now, if you think about that, that's not very fast. And so when you have water that's in a toilet bowl that's this big, okay, and you flush the handle and the water shoots in there, the fact that the Earth is turning 1/100,000th of a turn per second is not going to make that toilet water spin. No. It turns out that the people who design toilets shoot the water out of the toilet in order to initiate the circulation. Otherwise, it would just overflow, wouldn't go down the drain. So the toilet designers do this intentionally to make it go down the drain more efficiently. And you could demonstrate this to yourself too. If you fill up a water bottle with water and you try to dump it out in the sink, it'll go clunk, 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 and it won't empty that fast. But if you take that same bottle of water and you spin it, it'll create like a little, what looks to be a tornado, and it'll fall out of the bottom of the bottle very quickly. So that's the deal with that. And also a little bit about the Coriolis force too. The Coriolis force has a vertical component, which most of the time is negligible because of the way the atmosphere is set up. And its horizontal component, which we associate with things like hurricanes and low pressure systems, well, that is strongest at the poles. It's at its maximum at the North Pole and the South Pole, and it's at its minimum at the equator. In other words, there is almost no Coriolis force at the equator, okay? It's almost zero because the Earth is spinning at a rate of 1 time per day at the pole. When you go down to the equator, there's no sideways motion to the Coriolis force. There's a little bit of an up and down motion that gets kind of squashed by gravity, but if you travel from one side of the equator to the other by a few feet, there's almost zero perceptible change in the Coriolis force. So please consider that one busted. All right, Let's move on to, now the next one's controversial. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Condensation trails, or as many of you call them, chemtrails. So this is a picture from NOAA of a four-jet engine aircraft. And you'll notice that we have these white lines that are coming out of each of the four engines, okay? These are called cloud condensation trails. And they are made of the exact same material that clouds are made out of, either liquid water droplets or ice crystals. These form when very hot gases, okay, many, many hundreds of degrees, okay, that also, by the way, is a product of combustion, and you could look this up. One of the products of combustion is water vapor. So along with carbon dioxide and some other things. So the water vapor comes out, it is heated to, let's say it's 500-600 degrees. It gets into the atmosphere where it's 80 degrees below zero. And so, boom, turns into ice crystals and can persist in the sky as this elongated cloud, which we call a condensation trail. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Well, you're naive, Mike. They're spraying us. Well, here's what I would have to say about that. The physics behind how a cloud condensation trail forms is not complicated. It's very easy to figure out. It's very easy to reason what causes it. It could be demonstrated on a cold day when you walk outside and you breathe and you can see your breath. That's the hot, humid air from your mouth that is then causing water to condense into the cold air when it comes out of your mouth. Now you may say, well, why doesn't the cloud stay there? Well, because the humidity isn't high enough and there's not as big of a temperature difference, obviously, between the inside of your mouth and the air that you're breathing. But it's a very similar concept. And, but people don't know. And some people, look, I love a good conspiracy theory. Hold on a second. I love a good conspiracy theory as much as the next guy, but this is one that's just so, if you think about it, it's so easily disproven, okay? There are condensation trails that you can see all over the world, okay? Not just over your city. They're all over the world. We can see them actually using our satellites. So one would have to believe that there's a global conspiracy, which includes pilots, aircraft maintenance workers, everybody who loads the luggage onto the airplanes and so forth, to believe that international airlines from Dubai, from France, from Australia, from Indonesia, from Argentina, are all in cahoots to load their aircraft wings with a hazardous chemical mind control agent to spray everybody. And you could also think about it like this. It's a very, very inefficient way of poisoning people. Very inefficient. Plus, the Illuminati or whoever is in charge of planning all this is also poisoning themselves. So, I mean, if you're poisoning the earth, you're poisoning yourself too. So it doesn't make any sense. If you were going to try and poison the population, there'd be way more effective ways to do it. You can poison the water supply. You can poison the food supply. You can, well, there are other ways to do it. Spraying at 35,000 feet is not a very efficient way to do it. And besides, if you were going to do it, wouldn't you make it invisible? Consider that myth busted. All right, this one's a fun one. I'm not gonna get like angry about this one. It's fun, it's silly, okay? And it has to do with standing up eggs or brooms or anything else during some time of the year. And I say some time of the year because it varies. Some people try to stand up eggs on an equinox, which is when we have 12 hours of day and night, the start of spring and the start of fall. Some people try to balance eggs on the solstice, like the first day of summer, the first day of winter. We had a big trend a while ago where people were standing up brooms. And the truth is that it makes no sense at all. It doesn't. I mean, first of all, even on a solstice, which would be like the first day of summer, okay, the sun is still pulling at us at an angle. It doesn't make any sense. The sun only gets up to 23.5 degrees of north latitude anyway. And if you're in the United States, you're at 30 or 35 degrees north. So the sun is still pulling at an angle. In other words, there's nothing pulling upward on the egg at all. Like nothing. And it doesn't matter if it's the first day of summer, the first day of spring, or the third week in October when the bells ring. It has absolutely no effect whatsoever on whether or not an egg is going to stand up. And some people might say, well, I stood up eggs on the first day of summer, Mike, and so you don't know what you're talking about. Well, you can try to stand up eggs today and see if it works. And I think if you try hard enough, you will get it to work. So no, there's no magical pull on eggs or brooms or anything else on the equinox or the solstices or anything else. And you can prove it to yourself by looking at the earth and looking at the sun and figuring out where you are on the earth, whether you're in England or Australia or whether you're in Canada or Cuba. There's no lining up of the sun's gravitation with the top of the eggs. Busted, okay? Number 4, now this one is actually probably the most widespread, I think. I think this is the one that I hear about the most, through the years. I remember when I was growing up, I heard it from my parents. And I bet a lot of people out there still think that this is a thing. Heat lightning, okay? Have you heard heat lightning before? So when I was a kid, and even now, I would hear people talk about heat lightning as being it's usually on a hot night, summertime, that there will be these flashes of light off in the distance and no thunder. And that's called heat lightning. It's a special kind of lightning that doesn't make thunder. Well, that's not true. As cool as it would be, it's not true. What you're seeing is that at night, the light from a thunderstorm, lightning, can travel a long way, like 100 miles, okay? Easily 50, 60 miles away, you're going to see, at night, light from a distant thunderstorm. That light is traveling at 300,000 kilometers per second. Sound travels at about 700 miles per hour, and the sound also dissipates much more easily than the light does. So you're not going to hear the thunder from a storm that's 50 miles away, or 60 or 70 miles away, or even 15, 20 miles away. You're not going to hear the thunder. You're still going to see the flash. So at night, when you're seeing flashes of lightning and not hearing thunder, it isn't heat lightning. It's an actual regular thunderstorm. And if you were near the thunderstorm, you'd be hearing all kinds of colossal thunder. But because it's so far away, you're not able to hear it. And we call it heat lightning. Some people will refer to it as heat lightning, but it really doesn't have anything to do with heat, and it isn't any kind of special lightning. It's just regular old lightning that's too far away for us to hear thunder. The last one has to take the cake, which is why I saved it to last. And it has to do with this. Nuclear bombs. And it actually was brought up by one of our presidents. And it had to do with a subject that a lot of people have been talking about ever since the advent of nuclear weaponry in the 1940s. And that is, can we bomb a hurricane? I mean, it's actually just funny, but it's not funny, right? I mean, so obviously hurricanes are very scary. They cause an incredible amount of damage. They've taken an incredible amount of lives. And so a lot of people have tried to get very creative with what can we do to stop these things? Well, one of the things that comes up very often is, let's nuke it. Let's just drop a big nuclear bomb into the hurricane and that'll disrupt its flow, and then the hurricane will dissipate. Well, we're going to have to bust that myth. There are a lot of reasons why it would be a bad idea to drop a nuclear bomb into a hurricane, not the least of which is that it would spread nuclear fallout across the earth, and at the very least, it would cause nuclear fallout in the same locations that you're trying to save from getting hit by a hurricane. You would now have these long-living radioactive elements that are going to be dropping into the water supply, the air, you're going to be breathing it in, you're going to get radiation sickness, that's the main thing. The second thing is it wouldn't disrupt the hurricane most likely anyway. A hurricane is a giant heat engine, so it's transferring heat from the surface of the ocean or the Gulf, and when that water evaporates, it's going up into the cloud, it condenses, and it releases what's called latent heat. And that's really what powers the hurricane. Now, if you were to drop a giant nuclear bomb into, let's say, the eye of the storm, well, it's not going to do anything to disrupt the wind flow. You already have the winds that are, spinning around the eye of the storm. They have inertia, right? Inertia is like, you throw a ball, a Justin Verlander throws the ball at 100 miles an hour, and it's going to keep going unless it hits Martin Maldonado's glove. So it's the same kind of thing with the air. The air has mass and the air has momentum, it has inertia, and dropping a bomb into it might even intensify the storm because you're adding so much heat. So we don't know the exact effects that dropping a nuke into a hurricane would be, but we can say with almost near certainty that it would be a horrible idea, and it probably would not dissipate the storm at all, and it would just spread nuclear fallout everywhere. So there you go. Those are my top 5 favorite weather and earth science myths. I might do another one of these because I like myth busting and stuff like that. So there you go. So thanks for tuning in for this edition of Mondays with Mike. Please leave a like and a comment below. Please leave a polite comment or suggestion or question. I would love to hear those. And I hope you have a wonderful day.